Yeah, yesterday, which we're trying to understand passing arguments to the function. Already passing that arguments to the function, we had it in the before the session itself. But dynamically, the number of arguments, how do you pass it that? So that is a concept. We were understanding position-based parameters or named-based parameters. But yesterday we had about like args and quacks. So these two new sections, the new points which we're trying to understand that, yes. So args which represent single asterisk. So where position based, I mean like number of arguments, like dynamically you can pass it and you can read that all the arguments within the function. So this is one section. And then next like a quacks. So how do we represent quacks? I mean like a dynamic based, the arguments is you can use it double asterisk and the normally standard point of view use it like a quacks, but you can give that any name of this variable and this variable you can use it within the function. But here this is like as a dictionary. So whenever you are invoking this function, you need to use it name and value based. That is a key and a value. So as a name represents keyword based arguments. So you can use that like a keys to read the values of these parameters. So here these parameters position based, but like maybe you can pass it a 1 or a 10 or 0. That is a dynamically passing that arguments. Yeah, there are the 2 points. The important thing which we should understand dynamically. So how do you pass that like number of arguments? Maybe yes, some use cases you need to pass like some cases like 2 arguments, some cases 5 arguments, some cases 10 arguments. Then how do you handle that the function dynamically? So you can use it asterisk and you can read that all the arguments of the function and you can implement that logic of the function. So that's the one concept. Then we were understanding that like some more points on the custom functions itself, like about return value. Yes, one more important thing is return value. So always thinking about that, you are implementing that the function is nothing but that is going to take the inputs. Yes, inputs like as the arguments or the parameters. Then operation, that is a business logic, which is required for the function. Then finally output. So what is the third action which we need to think it while implement the function is output. But some functions we don't need to return that output, but some of the functions we need to return that output. Like a best example, print, it is not returning that any output. But a length function, so if you observe that length function, it is returning the some output. Yeah, that is on the base of the function which you are implementing. Yes, some functions required no return value, some functions which are required return value. But how do you return the value? So we can use the keyword return and whatever that like value would like to return that from this function. Once this function, the business logic completes, then whatever the result you have, that result if you would like to return back to the like invocation section, you can use a return keyword. Yeah, this is one more point which you are trying to understand it. And another thing, yes, which you are understanding like so have the habit of it. So whenever you are implementing the function, implement the documentation. So you can, I mean, but how do you define that like a documentation is? You can use it like 3 single quotations. It is like as a starting block and 3 single quotations that is like a ending block. Yes, you can use it either single quotation or double quotation. So both it will be accepted. And between that, the starting block and ending block, you can define that. So the what is the exact usage of this function? What are the parameters that is required for the function? What is the return value you are going to have it? So once this function has been executed, so that's kind of the information you can define it as a documentation. But what is the like usage of the documentation is, suppose I have implemented this function, but I am going to give it to that my other team members. So whenever they are going to use this function, they don't need to look into about that, the logic which I have implemented. So they can just refer the documentation and they can understand that how they can use this function or in which context they can use the function. So context is description of the function, and whenever they are using, yes, they need to pass the input parameters and they are going to get that output parameters. Yeah, that is, so have that a habit of it as a like best programming approach. So defining that before implementing the business logic, defining the documentation for it. Yeah, there is one concept which you are understanding. And finally, recursive approach which you are understanding is we were taking the best example, factorial, and you can define that the factorial in this approach, but this is normal logic implementation. But we can, the more like simplified way, if you just come up with that, the solution of this factorial, yes, like the number into the number minus one of that factorial. Yeah, so number into, that's like number minus one and that factorial. Yes, you can, if you just think about it, it is like as a recursive approach. So how you can use that recursive approaches is, yes, you can call the same function within the function. Yes, number into, yes, that function, and you can pass that number minus one. It is like as a recursive. But whenever you are defining the recursive one point, you need to always think about it. That is going to entering into that infinite loop. But that infinite loop, to handle that, you need to define the proper conditions. Yes, when this recursive function can be quit, or I mean, it can be terminated, that recursive, you need to define the condition. That is important. Yes, factorial, whenever the number reaches that's one, that means almost it is done that activity, right? Then we are going to return that. Yeah. So these are all the points that we are trying to understand: aux, quacks, recursive approach, and then return keywords. Are you clear about these points? Any queries, questions, please let me know before moving to the next one more small concept as we're understanding in the functions. That is about the variable scope we have. That's we need to understand it. So we move into that. Are you good? Type that like a good in the chart window, then we'll continue to the next concept. Or if you have any queries, just let me know that. Yes, good. Okay, fine, good. So, yeah, so next one more concept, what we have to say is, whenever we are working that, especially the scripting approach. So we are talking this, all these are all like scripting, whether that is shell scripting or Python scripting. So these are all like, I mean, we still didn't enter into that programming approach. So we are still learning about the data types and then the operators, which we are using about logical operators, bitwise operators, or relational operators, or the string operators, the collection data type related some operations. And then finally, we started about the functions and functions, how do we implement it? Then before that, like a control flow, that is about iterations, like where condition based, the control flow, you can handle that, or iterative based control flow, which we can handle that. Yeah, these concepts are the universal. So any programming you are learning that, these concepts are the universal. So maybe tomorrow there is a possibility to learn the Java. So these concepts like understanding that variables definitions and then control flows, all these things are the universal concepts. But we are using here Python syntaxes while implementation, and Python how it is providing that. Yeah, so in this context, like in the functions itself, let me talk about that one more, the beautiful, the kind of the section, or like we can say this concept. that is variable scope. So let me just define that one example and let me know that answer. Suppose I have this variable something age equal to 30. And yes, I'm going to print. So it is not the big deal of this. Yes, we get that like the age value as 30, right? Okay, we got that age value as 30. But what is my requirement we have is we need to define one function to increase the variable value, that is age value, to the something like next adding that the 5. Okay, let me define that's one function, then we can understand. So increase age. So this is a function. And in this function, I would like to declare that age equal to something 40. Age is the 40. Now I'm coming out of this function as indentation, we know that. So this age is, age which we are assigning that here within the function. So this is the age which we have assigned, and then we are printed. And then we are using this function. And within the function, again, I have reassigned age variable to the 40. Now I'm coming out of the function. I'm trying to print the age. Now, what is the value you are going to have it? So first to print already we are observing that is having that value 30. But so now what is the value of this print? So use the chart window and type that the value. Is it 30 or 40? Okay, I'm getting that answers that is about 40, 40, 30. Come on, quickly. 30. Okay. Okay, so let me discuss that. Okay, so first here 30 is initialized, and during whenever the statement is executing in the memory, age value is 30. Yes, it is printed the 30. And yes, here it is defined the function. And after the function, as the indentation is important, right? As we know that. Yes, this age which we have defined inside the function. So we have reassigned the value 40 to this age variable inside the function. And then this is outside of the function statement, that is a print. Now if I try to run it, so we got it first 30, second also 30. Why second is also the 30? So here we have defined that age equal to 40, but why it is not taken that? So here the point is you have defined the function, but where did you call that? Have you invoked the function? Yes, we didn't call the function. We just defined the function. Define the function, it is just loading into the memory, but it doesn't execute it. It doesn't execute it. It is just defined. But if I would like to execute it, I need to invoke the function, right? So this is calling the function. Then whenever I call or whenever I invoke this function, now this block of the statement will be executed. Now suppose if I execute this program, so what is the value we are going to get it here? First to print, okay, that is of 30, that's fine. But what about the second? Okay, so I'm getting that answers. Everyone, already we observed that here that output. But now I just invoked that function. Before we didn't invoke the function. Now, so what's going to have this variable value? Come on, I didn't see this response. Only one response, that is saying that 40. So if I click on this, yes, again you see this 30, 30 only. You got it still 30, 30. Why 30, 30? So we have invoked. After invocation, yes, this line of the statement has been executed and it is loaded into the memory. And after that, it is going to try to execute this statement. Indentation not correct. Where is that indentation? Which indentation? Indentation is correct only. This is the function related statements. And I'm invoking the function. And after invocation, I'm trying to print it. We need to add a print function to increase age. That means within this, you are talking that. No, I don't want to define the print function within this. So here I have declared that or assigned that value to this variable. Again, in this function, I just assign that value. I'm just verifying that. So is it assigning this to the age variable or not? We need to define the return value. Okay, fine. Return all that is different story. But here I have defined the variable here, and within the function also, I have reassigned the value of this variable. But whenever I am trying to print this, is it going to take that within the function value or is it script level variable value? That is important. So here that what we can say that scope of the variable value. So I don't want to get the 40, but I'm just checking about it. What is happening that here age, the value after assigning this within the function, is it changing that the global variable value or not? So this is the global level variable, which is at script level. But this variable is within the function level. The scopes are the important. Here, that is a point. So what is this concept here? We can say scope of the variable. So that's like, so what is the point here we can mention? This is the global variable and this is function level variable. So until it is executing that, the function level variable value is available. But once it returns back, that means whenever it is executing the print statement, now in the memory, it doesn't have this age value. So in the memory, it is going to have the global variable value. Is it clear about this point? So same variable, if I define this at a script level and as well as within the function level, there are the two different variables. So this is the script level and this is within the function. Suppose if I try to print here, print of the age. This is within function. This is, okay, so let's continue. So don't want. So now what is the value of this age? And what is the value of this age? What is the value of this age? Just observe that. Yes, outside of that function, so it is getting that normal script level variable. This variable we can say script level or global level. Yes. So this is the global variable. Yes, it is printed. Next, it is coming to here and it is executing this function. Yes, here it is initialized age equal to 40 and it is printed that age. But whenever it is written back to here, then from the memory, it is cleaning that. This variable is cleaned, but script level variable still it is there. Then whenever we try to print it, this age is taking that at a script level, not at function level. So here, the function level scope is different, script level variable scope is different. That is the main concept. Are you clear about this point? Okay, let me talk it that one more small point. Can I define that one more function within this function? So normally, like we are talking to the function 1, function 2, function 3, like that number of functions, you can define it. But can I define that another function within this function? That's we say that nested functions. If else blocks, how we are understanding that nested if else. Same thing, can I define that another function within this function? Yes, we can define it. Suppose let me define that one more function. So like that is add 5 to age. Some small function I'm defining that. And to this function, we are going to pass the age variable. Yeah, so age variable. Now what I'm going to do that age equal to or age plus or equal to, yeah, let me assign this 5. And now I'm going to print that is a nested method. Here I would like to print the age. So within the main function, yes, we are trying to print the age. And again, we are trying to define that's one more function. Within this function, increase age function, another function is there. Indentation, if we just observe that, this function is belong to, or this function is within this function. And there are the two statements which are defined within this function. Now what's going to happen that if I execute this block of the statement? Can you give me that answers? Analyze that. So how do you need to think it? Sequence of the statement. Okay, first it is loading into the memory, then print. Yes, it is printing the age. Here age is 30. Okay, 30 will be printed. Then this is loading into the memory. So it is not going to executing that. This is loading into the memory. Then it is coming to this block. Yes, increase age. Then control is going to here. Then age equal to 40 and a print within the function age. Yes, it is a printing that here. So the value of this age, as we have that within the function, whatever the value we have for this variable, that will be printed. Then what's going to happen that? The control. Is it coming that control coming back to here, or is it going to execute these statements? Now print within function and as well as nested method. Both it is going to printing or only within the function, or what's going to happen that? This one, let me define that before function. After the function invocation. So now what are the values it is going to print? Before function will be printed. That's fine, no issues as a sequence. Then it is loading into the memory. Then it is going to invoke this function. Yes, it is coming to here the control. Yes, it is the loading into the memory age equal to 40. But this is within the function scope. Then print, yes, within the function, it is printing that now 40. Yes, here 30, here 40. Then what is going to happen that this function will be invoked or not? That is my point. Okay, 30, 40, 45, 30. Good. So here if I try to execute that, okay. So another Satyababu is saying the 30, 40, 30. Okay. Tom's also same. Yeah, now if you observe that 30, 40, yes, sorry, 30, 40, 30. Why 30, 40, 30? Yes, this is the before function. Fine. It is always going to execute it. Then it is loading into the memory. So it is coming to this statement, yes, increase age, the control coming to here, and it is initializing age equal to 40, and it is printing within the function. Yes, that is a 40. Yes, that is a printed. But this function, we didn't invoke it, right? We didn't invoke this function. We just defined. This is just definition. But we, even within the function also, doesn't matter that it has to be invoked. So you just defined is nothing but loading into the memory. But when it is going to execute this function, whenever we invoke the function. That's why this function is not executed. That's why we don't see that nested method related output here. So it is a printed control coming written back to here. And then it is printing that after function. Yes, that is a 30 value. This is a global variable value. It is printing that. Is it clear? Interesting, right? So how the interpreter is behaving that. Now, I need to invoke this nested method also. How do I invoke this? Can I call here? Age passing. Can we use it outside of this function? So you see this, it is showing that red mark, unresolved reference of this function. That means this function is available only within this main function. You cannot use it outside of this function because this is a nested function. You cannot use it outside. So what I need to do that? I need to use it indentation. Now what is the meaning of that? I am calling this function within this function, right? In the increase age, I'm calling that add 5 to age. Yes, now this function which will be executed. So here in the script level, how we are defining that? Now within the function, we are defined one more function, and that function we are calling that within the function itself. Is it clear about that? I cannot call this function outside of this function. You see that's if I'm invoking this function outside of this function, it is not having that any reference. So the function within the function, you can invoke it only in that function, not from outside of the function. Okay, now I'm invoking this function. Now what's going to happen that? Super twist. So that is here. Then control is coming to here. Age is 40 assigned, and within the function 40. So 30 here, 40. Then control is coming to here. Yes, it is invoking the function. Now control going to here. And which age is going to take it here? Is it 40 is going to take it here? Or is it going to pass the 30 here? So now here we are going to get it like 35 or 45, which one? And then finally here after the function. Good twist. Now give me that answer. So what's going to happen that? So 30, 40, 45, 30. Okay, good. But are you understanding? I mean, main point is, are you understanding that how the sequence of the statements or order of the statements that will be executed? That is important. Even if I define the function also, while executing that, it is not going to, I mean, while executing the script, the interpreter is not executing that function directly. So when this will be executed, whenever you invoke explicitly, that is one important point. Second point is variable scopes. We are understanding that. Okay, let's try to run it and see this output. Yes, we got it 30 first. Yes, this is the 30. Then coming to here, and it is within the function. Within the function, yes, we have defined the 40. Yes, 40 is printed here. Then coming to here, yes, it is called this function. It is invoking this function by passing the age. Age is nothing but here 40 within this function, right? So within this function 40, we have that 40 is passed to this function, and 40 plus the 5, that is a 45. 45 is printed here. Then it is outside of the loop. Then it is trying to print it age. Yes, this age is belong to that global variable. This is outside of the function. Is it clear now? The variable scopes and the function, yes, can have that inside the function. But how do we invoke the functions within the function? Are you clear at this point? Type that CLR in the chat window to move into this next concept. These are all very, very important. Whenever you are analyzing the scripts, existing scripts, you should come up with that, like at least understanding that existing scripts. Yes, you need to come up with this kind of evaluation. So you need to think like as interpreter. So if you are understanding this points, just type that the good, then we'll move to this next point. That is exceptions. One more important concept in the Python. Okay, good. So let's move to this next. Any queries, questions on these functions? Defining the functions, passing the arguments to the functions, and using the arguments within the function, function invocation, and then understanding like while passing the parameters is position-based parameters, named-based parameters, and you can define the parameters with the default values, and then dynamic parameters you can pass it with args, and dynamic key value-based parameters we can pass it, that is quags, and return, that is returning of that output of the functions, then recursive functions. Finally, the scope of the variables. Yes, the scope, if you define this any variable, that variable is within this function. This is the function scope. And this is the global scope. That is script level, we can say that. Good. So let's move into this next another concept that is about exceptions. So one of the very, very important concept in the programming. Okay, so what about these exceptions? Can you give me that so far, what are the different types of exceptions we got it whenever we are working with the scripts? Do you remember that any exceptions? So we are facing those different types of exceptions. Do you remember that any exceptions? Okay. Okay, name error, good. Index error, good. Yeah, remember there are some of the exceptions, like they ask you in interviews. So what is like index out of range error? Or what is the type error? Okay, let me talk about some of the exceptions. Suppose simple, if I use it like if true, And if I go for the print of something, hooray. So what's going to happen in this function? I mean, in this script, is it valid or is it like any error? Are you going to have it? Is it a valid one? So if you try to run, if you try to run this one, you see that we got it like a indentation error. Here, whenever we got that exceptions, you can clearly understand that in which file we got that exception. Yes, this is the file, we got it. And in the line number 2, we got it. Yes, this is the line number 2, we got it. And in the print, whenever it is saying that, whenever we are invoking that, we got it indentation error. Yes, obviously this is indentation error, right? Yes, if you define that, at least you need to define one statement within the function or not. As we are understanding the pause keyword. At least one statement you need to define that within this. So if I don't define that any statement and if I directly use like this, so then it is going to give that the exception saying about it indentation error. So here the point what we can understand is whenever we have this like this kind of exceptions, so what's going to happen that is interpreter is exited with like a abnormal state. Like suppose if you define that or if you're performing any transaction, the transaction related entered data from the memory which will be removed and interpreter is going to exiting that in abnormal mode. That means it is not handled properly. So whenever you are implementing that, the code, handling that errors is very, very important. Okay, exceptions will get it definitely, but you need to handle properly the exception. That means you need to, close all the statements of that interpreter, whatever it is trying to execute it is, we need to exit that in the normal way instead of like abnormal way. But how do you handle that cases? So let me give that like one more example. So this is indentation error. Okay, let's leave it, but like let's go for that. Let me take it some more other type of exceptions. So we are going to take that input from the user. Already we know that's this functionality. Enter an integer. We are asking this user to enter the integer value. But actually like input function is going to return that like a string or integer. What is the data type it is going to return that? Input function. Input function will return that which type of data type? If you just observe that it is returning the string data type, str. Yes, it returns the string. But like we are asking this user enter that integer. So you need to data type it, right? So whatever he is entering that by default that returns in the format of the string. We are going to convert that one into that integer and we are assigning to this variable. Okay, good. Now let's try to print this. So what is the function we are going to do? That is, we are going to perform some function here, inversing of that number. So whatever like the value we are getting that, the inverse of this value is So how do we perform that inversion of that value? 1 divided by that number. Okay, so this is the logic which we are implementing. So the user is going to enter that one integer, and that integer we are taking that, we are doing that inversion of it. That means dividing by that 1 divided by that number, whatever the user is entering that. So if I try to execute this statement, sorry, yes, that is required. So what's going to happen that? Yes, it is asking to enter an integer. Okay, I'm going to enter the 2. Then we are getting that inversion of this 2 is 0.5. It's good, no issues. But if the user enters something like A, has entered thus now A string, but actually he has to enter that integer, but he has given that like alphabet. But alphabet you cannot do that, right? 1 divided by A, we have the meaning of it. So what is the error we are getting there? What is the exception? From the interpreter. Interpreter is terminating that because of this exception, that is a value error, invalid literal for int with the base 10. So that's we are trying to divide with this letter, it is invalid. So what is the type of error? Value error. But as a programmer, so if you have that like that would like to work with us as a best developer, you need to handle this error. User doesn't know that. Maybe user enters like integer, or maybe user enters that's like alphabets. But you should, I mean, about your interpreter should not terminate like this. So this is not the graceful shutdown, the graceful shutting down of the interpreter. This is the forceful, it is terminating forcefully. If you have this any business transaction which is happening, that transaction will be, the transaction data will be interrupted or corrupted. So we need to handle properly closing that interpreter or executing the interpreter. So if you got that exception like this is nothing but, yes, maybe you will be losing about the transaction data. So you need to handle this. You need to handle that. This is when we say that handling exceptions. How do we handle that? Yes, that is now like, let's talk at that. Maybe if you know this already programming. So try. So within the try block, this is like how we are using that if block and else block. So here we say that how do we handle that exception is we use that try block. Yes, what are like business logic which we have that all the statements you can define in the try block. This is the starting block. And indentation, if you just observe that, yes, all these 2 statements we have defined in the try block. The try block. But how do we have that if block with else? Like the same thing, but where do you handle that? Okay, so try what it is doing is, if any exception which has been found it in these statements, it is going to throw in that. Instead of terminating the interpreter, the process, interpreter process, it is going to try to catch the exception. But where it is going to catch that is, we need to use that except block. Try and except. If else, how we have. So within the try block, you can implement about your block of the statements. Now in this, I mean, whenever it is executing the block of the statements, if you have that any exception, that exception will be, now this try block is going to throw that exception to this block. And here you can add about your statements. Like I would like to print, or I would like to handle that like maybe rollback related points, or maybe like variable data if you have anything that is nullifying that, or cleaning up the data. So whatever you would like to handle that, like in case exception, you got it, but that exception to handle this smoothly, that is gracefully, Then you can define the statements in the except block. Suppose here, what is the exception we are getting? That is, if the user enters an integer, fine. So there is no exception at all. But if the user enters other than integer, that is a letter something, that is throwing that exception you can catch it and you can give that output to the user. First, we have entered invalid. So now we are going to show that that's like first you didn't enter that proper value. You did not provide a number. Yes, he didn't provide the number, right? That's why we are getting that exception. Now we are going to show to the user by handling that exception. So he did not provide a number. So I will not calculate the inverse number, inverse function. Is it clear about this? Try and accept block. Now let's try to execute this. Suppose if the user enters that integer. Okay, so something 2, no issues. The inverse of the 2 is 0.5. Fine. Now let me try to re-execute that once again. If the user enters the CA, then it is not throwing exception. It is like a graceful way of we are shutting down. Now control is coming to that. So if you have this any exception in this try block, control is coming to here and it is printing that. Yes, you did not provide a number, so I will not calculate the inverse. That means user can understand now, okay, I entered that wrong letter, wrong input. The next time whenever he is going to execute it, so with that exception, he can understand it and he can give that the proper the number. Are you clear about this? Handling that exception within the function. Simple, try exception. So what are the block of the statements you are implementing, that always make sure that you are handling this block of the statement in the try block. And in case any exception which is written there, that exception you can catch it and you can handle that. What you would like to do that? Yes, that is, do you want to print it or do you want to suppose that like you have some variables or some collection objects, maybe you need to nullify that, you need to free up that, or you need to clean up the data. So those kind of activities you can implement that in the exception block. Are you clear these points? Try and exception block. Exception handling is very important concept. So in the interview, whenever you are writing that any block of the statement, first start with the try. Any statements you are implementing that, if block or that like for loops, first to try to start with a try block and then implement about your block of the statements and try to handle exception. Then interviewer will impressed with this statement. Simple. So you know that handling about the uninterrupted the cases of the scripts. Okay, let's talk it in another the same exception, same point. So here, suppose if he is going to pass the 0 value to this function. Let me try to run this. And he is going to pass the 0. Is it valid one? Integer wise it is valid, fine. But we are doing the division here. 1 divided by 0. Normally what is going to happen that here? 1 divided by 0. What's going to happen that 1 divided by 0? Okay, so here let me execute this. This is in the mid. So here we are handing that exception. So it comes that's control into that exception block. You didn't provide a number, so I will not. But I provided the number. It is saying that you didn't provide the number, but I provided the number. It is not properly handled the exceptions, right? Because all the exceptions, it is showing that the same message. But actually, so what is the exception here? We are going to get it 1 divided by 0. That is 0 division error. This is the error. So if I pass it as the 0, whenever I enter that the 0 here, so what is the kind of exception? That is 0 division error. But whether the 0 division error, whether that is, suppose if I pass it like, what is the other exception? Print 1 divided by a. This is one more exception. What is the type of exception, this one? This is a name error. Okay, name A is not defined. Okay, so let me define that variable, something var equal to, I'm going to assign that A. Now, what is the type of exception? Type error exception. Unsupported operand type. Okay, let me convert this one into, as we are doing that below, I'll convert this one into int. Actually, string we have defined. I'll define that. I'll convert this one into. Now let's understand this. What are the different types of errors we have that? Now here it is showing the value error, type error, value error, 0 division error. There are like a different types of exceptions. So if I remove this comment, I'm getting the 0 division error. So line, whenever it is executing that 0 division error, and it is throwing that exception, and remaining statements are not executed. This is not the syntax error, right? This is a 0 division error. So what are the exceptions we are getting that? Sorry. Zero division error. What is that? Another exception we are getting that? Value error. So they're all just to show that I implemented this block of the statements. Okay, now let's come back to that about our actual implementation. Yes, name errors, yes. Now, if the user enters, as we are talking about it, so if the user enters A, then we should show this message. You did not provide a number, so I will not calculate the inverse because he is entering the letter or alphabet. Without alphabet, we cannot do that division. Suppose if he is going to enter that the integer, but value is a 0, then I need to print saying that about you provide 0 and division, but with the 0 division, it is not possible. That's kind of the message I need to show to them. So here I need to handle the 2 exceptions, but actually we have implemented all the exceptions, same print. But you need to handle that exception type based. So if the 0 division error, different message. Value error, different message. How do we handle that now? Yes, now we can define that exception with the type. So if the exception is value error, yes, you did not provide a number, so I will not calculate the inverse. Suppose if the exception is, what is that another exception, possible exception in this block? Zero division error. If the zero division error, now I would like to print to the user saying about it, you provided zero and zero and division by zero is not possible. Yeah, you provided zero and division by zero is not possible. So if he's going to enter that like a zero, then we are going to handle this exception. And if he's going to enter that like a invalid integer, then we are going to show that this kind of exception. Are you clear? You can handle that on the basis of like this block. What are the exceptions? What are the possible exception that is throwing that? You can handle that exception blocks. Now you are going to show to the user proper message. Suppose if he enters like a normal valid integer, no issues, everything is good. So only try block has been executed. It is not entered into that exception block. But user entered some like, okay, the letter something G. You didn't provide a number, so I will not calculate the inverse. Yes, user can understand. Oh no, I made the mistake. I didn't provide a number. I will not calculate. It is saying that it is not going to calculate that inverse. So then user came to know that he has to enter that proper integer. Then suppose, okay, I need to provide the integer. Okay, I'm going to enter that integer 0. Yes, this is the integer. Then what is like the user is getting that? Okay, you provided 0 and division by 0 is not possible. Oh, that then user is going to came to know that, okay, I have provided the 0. So the inverse is doing that division by 0. So it is not possible, obviously, right? Then he will re-execute it and he will enter that proper number. Is it clear? Handling that exception, the beauty of the programming. So how we are going to get it, like a proper messages whenever we are using that applications. So handling exceptions is one of the very, 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 very important concept. So here on the base of like exceptions, you need to handle that. Yes, if it is the value error or if it is a zero division error. So what are the possible exceptions during testing? All those things which comes out of, all these kind of exceptions during that testing with a different data, by giving that, we will get the exceptions, and all those exceptions should be handled by the developer. Suppose value error, zero division error. Maybe in some cases like exception is coming there. Then define that generic exception block. Define that one generic exception. But this is not like a type based we are handling. So if the type of the error is control coming to here. If the type of exception is zero division, then control is coming to here. If the exception from this try block is other than this value error, zero division error, then you can define that the print one more function here. So I'm not sure what's happened. Please recheck that once again. Recheck the input to data. So this is a generic exception handling that. So this is specific to the type-based handling, and this is generic. Yes, any exception other than this value error, zero division error, then it comes to the control coming to here. Suppose here if I define that something if block, like same thing, which I defined the before. What's going to happen that here? Yeah, print indentation here. But indentation errors are not going to handling that. This is one point which we need to understand from the Python. Python is not handling that indentation error. So we have that, that's why IDEs, right? So whenever you are implementing itself, you will be knowing that. But remaining these two things during execution, this kind of exception. But the indentation errors, like during that implementation itself, the developer can understand it, should handle that. But Python is not going to handle that, these indentation errors. Is it clear? Because clearly it is saying that, yes, whenever I'm implementing that, I'm the developer, I'm implementing time itself, I can understand that. So indentation expected. Yes, I need to handle here properly. But remaining block of the statements during execution time on the base of that user input, it is throwing that. A developer is not having the control. This is during that executing that the program. So it is a handling that. Now Python is a handling that are providing these type of exceptions. But indentation error, so it is there is no explicitly handling by the Python. Because while implementation itself, that we can handle that exception. Are you clear about this point? Are you clear about this block of the statements? How do we handle that exceptions? One of that very, very important concept. Suppose let me remove this integer here. I'm not going to convert into that int. And if I try to execute this, so what's going to happen? Let's see that. Suppose if I enter that valid integer also. So here, what is that? Like which block it has been executed? I'm not sure. Please recheck the input data. Because it is not the value error. It is not the zero division error. Something different error we got it here. Because so it is taking that the string, right? Input is going to return the string. On the string, it is performing that the arithmetic operation. Then it is we can say that's like a type error. This is the type error. Yes or no? Are you getting the point? Like if you'd like to get that exception, let me show that example here. So variable A we are passing, but we are not converting into that integer. Without converting in that integer, the string we are using that. So what is that exception that is going to have it? So type error. But type error have we handled here? We are handling that only value error, zero division error. Type error we are not handling. That's why it is coming to that general block of the exception. But if you'd like to handle this case also, yes, you can. Sorry. Let me copy this. So what is the type of the error? Type error. Yes, now if I try to execute this, let me comment this. Enter integer, yes, even if you enter that integer also, it is coming to the type error block. But if I add it int, and if I enter that valid integer now, yes, it is executing successfully. Are you clear that? So during testing, these are all like we can say that during implementation, we need to do the testing of about our block of the statements. Unit testing, we will call that. Unit testing, you need to test with all the possible cases. and you need to handle about your scripts. Now you see this, we have handled like a value error, zero division error, type error, and a generic block, which you can define that except. So remaining all the types of the errors, it is coming to this block. So examples here, we are talking that this is about, let me just comment that. This is which one? Indentation error. So this is one thing. What about this one? Which type of exception this is? This is the zero division error. What about these next two statements? This is the value error, right? The value error. Yes, A you have given, but A with the A, like, is it possible? No, that is not possible. Then this is about type error. So there are like just uncomment it and try to like just check it. There are like a unit testing. I'm doing that. So this is actual my block of that implementation, but I'm just trying to do that. What are the possible exceptions from this? And I'm trying to identify that all the exceptions, and I'm handling that over here, all the exceptions. Are you clear these points? Try catch blocks, not try catch. Normally try catch, we say that's in the Java. Try exception block. Or you can say the try catch block. So you are catching the exceptions. Catching. In the Java, we say that catch, but here in the Python, except block. Is it interesting? So is it good? So how the programmers or like applications will be implemented. So we enter that like the data, but sometimes the data is invalid, or sometimes because of the data transaction will get failure. But failed transaction, we should not, I mean, it should be gracefully handled. Now we are handling the gracefully. The interpreter is instead of like a forcefully terminating. So we are handling that. Okay, if you have that exception, come to here and execute this statement and exit that. This is handling of gracefully stopping the process. So we are executing the script is nothing but background. One process is that a process, as we know that like in the Linux concepts, like a gracefully closing, forcefully closing. Forceful, we should not do that. Graceful always is recommended. But within the script, if you have that exception, that is a forcefully terminating that that process. But how do we handle that process instead of forcefully, gracefully? How do we handle that is by using the try exception block in the Python. So that is a concept for today. So which we have, that is one of the interesting. And with all these concepts, almost we have done important the points. But still we have that some more concepts on the Python, like modules concept. Yes, that is one more important. Yes, if the time permits, tomorrow we'll talk about the modules. What is a module and how do we handle the module? Then we have that OOPS concepts, some OOPS concepts which we should know. That is advanced to this Python. Then we'll come back later. And Max, tomorrow we'll close about this, the Python, understanding all the concepts. Then from Monday onwards, we go for that, starting like as I mentioned that we learn it about that. Now we understand programming, we understand, yes, that is a operating system wise, or maybe some people you understand like infrastructure, that is about AWS cloud. Yeah, now this is the time to move into that next step, using all these things and applying to that infra level or like application level. So using the servers. That is, we'll come back. Are you good? So any queries, questions, please let me know. So if you're good, so type that the good, or otherwise, yes, let me know that if you have any points which you would like to discuss. How do you feel about all these concepts? Is it giving that the confidence? Yeah, in the interviews, they ask you all these points only. Other than this, nothing. If you are good with this, then you are suitable for like a data science, or you are suitable for that AI, or you are suitable for that infrastructure to write it using the Python. Yeah, these are all like basic pillars. So the getting the code, you can just type it in the Google. So I need that factorial sample with the Python. Yes, you will get the sample code, no issues. But once you got the code, how you are able to understand, that is important. So the getting the code these days, that is not a big deal for that particular requirement. But once you got the code, whether you are able to handle that code, that means any customizations which are required. So those customizations, whether you are able to perform it or not. So that's confident. If you're able to build it, then you are really good on this program. And as well as you can, in interviews, they don't go for the asking that big program. They ask like, yes, these basic things, whether do you know it or not. So very good. Before we go to the next level, give 2 days time to recollect the concepts. Okay, good. So this today, what is that? Is it Thursday or Friday? Thursday. Okay. Let's do one thing. Tomorrow we'll talk about the module concept. Then Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Monday as anyway New Year. Those 3 days, take it, and come back to the Tuesday. We'll start about that in the new year with a new concept. Then these are 3 days you can try to the work with that. Like maybe you are learning the shell scripting, maybe you are learning that. Yes, try to recollect about AWS concepts and all that. Is it okay to everyone? Oh, good. I see this. You are all okay. Good. Thank you. So tomorrow we'll meet it, and we'll conclude about that. The Python, one more small concept, not small. Okay, that is an interesting concept. The very important. So the module concept. So we'll try to understand the modules, and in the new year we'll start with that, the new concepts. Thank you. Thank you all.